Welcome to Fort Fritz, your one-stop for news, current events, and all forms of entertainment relating to the supernatural, the paranormal, the Fortean, and things that go bump in the night, all packaged and presented by Know-Nothing Know-It-Alls, entertaining the unknown. Hello, I am your host, Fritz, and for the next hour, we are jumping right into our favorite stories to keep us occupied during this pandemic. So, without wasting any time, let's jump in to the Nepalese royal family curse. This one's narrated by Kaz. All you have to do, if you want more stories from Kaz, download the iHeartRadio app and search Fort Fritz.
Clearly, you guys have never heard of the Nepalese royal family curse.
I haven't.
No, not at all.
No. And it actually just came, it was 2001, so that was 17 years ago. That's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago in
17 years
terms.
Since 2001.
Yeah.
According to the legend, about 200 years ago, Prithvi Narayan Shah was the initial founder of the Nepalese royal dynasty, the royal kingdom. He started by making conquest of smaller areas around him and kind of developing, you know, how you do.
Right.
You take over the local areas.
And then you look at your neighbor's plot and you go, I can kill my neighbor.
Well, first you got to be like, hey, if I get into some beef, you got my back?
Yeah. Are you cool?
And the guy's like, nah. You're like, well, I'll kick your ass. Okay, yeah, fine. All right. And that's how you start a kingdom. You get everyone to say, I got your back. So everyone said that they had his back. And this guy was the king, quote unquote, for a little while. And he was walking through the forest one day. He came across a man named...
The king walked back then?
Oh, yeah. The king was walking through the woods one day, and he came across a holy man, a yogi named Goraknath. Goraknath.
Goraknath.
And this man was believed to have supernatural powers. He was like kind of a mystic forest man of the area.
Forest yogi.
About 200 years ago. So the king offered this man a piece of curd. The man accepted it. Goraknath.
Was it bean curd like tofu, or
we're gonna
was
go
it
with
something?
cheese?
I was
'cause
actually wondering that.
It fits
Thank you.
It's probably bean, honestly, if we're thinking about it.
You don't
but
know.
Let's go cheese. It says curd.
It's a Wisconsin cheese curd.
It's a curd. It's an
Like a
ancient
curd.
curd
the
from
squeaky-
200 years ago. You
the
know,
squeaky one?
Use your imagination. He offers the man the curd. The man takes the curd, chews it up in his
Offered the man the curd is
The
the
guy-
favorite sentence I've ever heard.
Man one goes, you want the curd? Man two goes, I want the curd.
Hook me up with
yeah.
that curd, brother.
So man two takes the curd. He takes the curd, he chews it up, and he says, I'm going to spit this back out. I want you to catch it in your mouth and eat it.
What?
To the king.
Are they in a frat? This is like
Got him!
like
frat boys.
Hellenistic row. Is it?
He offered to spank him, and then he made him pay him for it.
Carry a Bing cherry in his butt for 12 meters.
That
Like,
sounds
Drink
really
a whole handle in 5
specific.
minutes?
So he spits the curd out, and the king refuses. The king says, "No, that's gross as shit. I'm not in on that."
Did it just hit him in the face? Or
It
did he
actually,
dodge it?
no. It specifies the curd dribbled onto the king's 10 toes. He spit it out
All
onto
10.
his feet.
That was just
Just
a long...
slid across all of them.
It should have just hit 1 or 2 toes. It didn't have to hit all 10.
So he the king was repulsed by this, right? But the yogi was like, you know what? I curse you. I
Why?
curse you because he had the audacity to refuse the chewed up curd from a forest man.
You, Forest Yogi.
You guys are prudes, all right? The amount
Why
of
would
weird
you
shit you put in your
looked at me and
mouth.
you pointed at me.
The amount of weird shit you guys put in your mouths, and
How
you're gonna
dare
tell
you.
me that like a little bit of cheese in some weird like yogi's mouth is like way too weird for you.
That you've never met before.
Yeah, no.
This man is the only one that's earned my respect.
Thank you.
Stranger danger.
200 years ago, you're safe.
Unbelievable.
All right, cheese from another man's mouth, safest thing you can eat.
You're saying,
That sounds like a thing you would say. Like cheese from another man's mouth.
Like cheese from another man's
You
mouth.
ignore this,
So
you
go
have
the
no honor.
days of our lives.
You must accept this truth. Like cheese from another man's mouth.
let me just posit this, okay? Infectious diseases are communicable from the mouth. So basically, you
In the
get
butt.
everything. You get the entire profile of this man and his current infections spitting onto.
He's a holy man. He's a yogi.
You're goddamn right I am.
Takes care of himself.
That does. There's no scientific
No, there's-
backing in what you
no.
just said. There.
This is a natural person, and they are eating some
Anyway.
cheese, and they're
All right,
offering it
I've
to them
seen pictures
in their
of
own
like
special
ancient
way.
yogis, and I never thought, wow, they got great teeth.
So he curses the king. He curses the king. He says, in 10 years, your entire dynasty will fall apart. Your family will fall apart. I curse you. And the king, realistically, understandably was like, that's a little harsh. That's a little much.
Wow,
That seems a
no
little
chill,
much.
man.
Maybe give me, if you were going to let me know ahead of time, then I might have done it.
Like,
I didn't
eat
know,
this cheese
I didn't know
or this happens.
this happens, right. I didn't know that was what was at stake. So
He goes-
anyway.
he goes, "Do I get one mulligan?"
Can I get
Leave my forest, he said with a spray of curd. So the king was like, all right, well, f it. So he leaves. So 10 generations.
So cheese.
Exactly. So 10 generations pass, but the 9th and 10th are in
Flux?
They are alive at the same time. The king
Okay.
was the 9th generation, King Birendra. His queen was Aishwara, and his son was Prince Dipendra.
They had nice little.
Dipendra.
From the land of the easy names.
Dhirendra. I'm sure I'm butchering it. Obviously, as we do on Fort Fritz, I don't speak Nepalese or whatever it is that
You're
they
so
speak.
uncultured.
I know. I'm
Like us.
sorry.
Get it together.
I feel like these. Anyway, so the king and his son, the prince, are both very well liked. They're both extremely popular members of the royal family. They are well educated. They're public figures. And then tragedy strikes in 2001. Prince Dipendra, depending upon how you're
Mispronouncing it.
It's a snipe.
Enters the Narahanti royal palace in the Nepalese monarchy and murders 10 members of his family and wounds 5 others.
Damn.
During a party, which is apparently a monthly thing. They party monthly, which is badass.
monthly
It's
party.
like how they do it in the
That's
Monthly
what they
murder
call it.
party.
Yeah.
Just like a stabbing, like with a knife or
with guns.
Okay.
Go with several guns.
Okay.
Let's put it right here as the first point of like mystery. 4 large guns. All right, 3 large guns and 1 handgun. Let's say. So this is a prince of a royal family, well liked, intelligent, educated,
And then 10 members of this family
murdered
murdered.
in a party.
And the sad thing is that they would have been murdered if more of them had guns. That's
So it's interesting that you bring that up because there's significant stories about the security detail on staff that night. This is the Nepalese royal family. There were other dudes with guns there that were supposed to keep the other, because they have problems with the Maoists. There's issues, there's political turmoil at the time, right? The security detail on staff that night were trained members of the military. These men were the Secret Service of the Nepalese like royal family, right? Surrounded by these people, the man managed to kill King Birendra, Queen Aishwara, Prince Nirajan, Princess Shruti, his only sister, Princess Shanti, Princess Sharanda. So these are other siblings of the other members of the family. I guess they get royal titles. Kumar Kadaga and Princess Jayanti, as well as Prince Dipendra himself, because he died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound following the attack, is what we'll say. So Dipendra died essentially 3 days later. He was in a coma. He was crowned king during that time.
Wow.
During the 3 days that he was in a coma by his uncle, Gayanedra.
Was it just like a ceremonial, you're now king and
Yes.
you're probably going to die kind of thing?
So his uncle, released the official story from the Nepalese royal family saying that an automatic weapon was discharged.
Automatic weapon, Jesus.
An automatic weapon was discharged accidentally at a party, and that several members were dead, and that turmoil was happening, and Gayendra, the uncle, was going to see us through this, right? So he had the dying prince / assailant crowned king, but then conspicuously, the royal doctor was barred from attending Prince Dipendra's bedside at the hospital for 3 days. This man was supposed to attend him medically to give, to resuscitate him or to give him treatment for gunshot wounds and etc. It was hospital staff only, 3 days. He was pronounced dead after the 3rd day, immediately rushed from the hospital to a funeral pyre. No autopsy.
A funeral pyre?
No.
They burned his ass in 2001?
It's Nepalese royal family, man. That's how they do.
That doesn't explain what I just said.
Totally does.
They probably burn people in Nepal.
Yeah.
Probably.
Old Dipendra. He's dependable.
Very dependable.
Until he massacred his whole family. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
So, a two-man committee comprising of several other men who I'm going to butcher their names, so I won't even bother, but they're like representative of the Justice Department in Nepal, carried out a week-long investigation into the massacre. The investigation concluded, after interviewing more than 100 people, including eyewitnesses and palace officials, that Dipendra had carried out the massacre. A large number of critics, Nepalese, both inside of Nepal and abroad, disputed the official report because many facts reported by the investigation seemed to contradict each other. One sticking, I guess, eyewitness quote was, of the very popular Dipendra, he can give up the throne for his sake of love, but he can never do this kind of thing. So one of the stories put forward of why he would have done this was that he intended to marry a woman who was of unsavory, I guess, quality to the royal family.
A widower, or
no, she was like royalty, but she wasn't the right kind of royalty. She was like from a disputing clan, that had like relatives in another country and stuff. It wasn't as like royal as she should have been. She wasn't like perfect. But he was like, you know what? I don't care. There was a rich family, but it wasn't like royalty, like appropriate for him to marry. So he said, I don't care. I want to marry her anyway. And they told him, well, you're going to give up the throne if you do that. You're going to have to do that as a regular person.
They would have to abdicate the
correct.
The throne.
So that was kind of the contention point, and that's what they pinned it on. They said, okay, well, he was upset because he wasn't able to marry this woman, and that quote came out from that person. He can give up the throne for his sake of love, but he can never do this kind of thing. Meaning that several people who knew him.
So, are you saying he could do anything for love?
But he won't do that.
But he won't do that.
Oh, jeez.
He won't do that with several guns at his own family's party. So the overall conception of him was that this was a man who wouldn't do something like this, right? Like he would have rather have like just forsaken everything than kill his entire family.
So people say it's got to be a curse.
Bullshit. People say it's bullshit, first of all. So there are several, I guess, interpretations of what happened, but you got to look at like who benefits, right? Like whenever something like this happens, everyone in the line of succession was wiped out except for this uncle, Gayendran. Again, I'm sorry. The guy was a scumbag, so I don't care if I mispronounce his name. But anyway, he
deserved it.
Yeah, that guy.
Several
Had it coming. Holy got it coming.
Several inconsistencies with the report of what happened that night. First of all, the guy was a well-to-do guy. How did he know how to operate it was like a SPAS 12-gauge automatic shotgun,
Jesus.
HK MP5 submachine gun,
Ooh, wow.
Glocks, and all this other shit.
While
there's security, a full security detail standing around
Inside job.
that would allow this 10 people to be massacred inside of this party, right? So another inconsistency was he eventually succumbed to his wounds 3 days later due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but it was on the wrong side. It was one of those wrong side things. He was right-handed. It was on the left side of his head,
Oh, so
and
he
there
was
were two
killed, you think?
bullets.
Oh, weird.
According to eyewitnesses, there were 2 holes in the side of his head, but again, unable to be verified due to the fact that they rushed his body immediately after barring the royal doctor from seeing him for 3 days, immediately to a funeral pyre, no autopsy. Sounds like a setup, right? So people think it was due to the fact that India was putting pressure at the time. We're going to get busted for this. India was putting pressure on the time of the Nepalese government to take defense contracts, to be like, hey, we're going to defend you, buy our defense stuff. And the king of Nepal was like, we don't need your shit. I'm going to buy some stuff from China. And then they basically, the eyewitnesses around the place say that the hallmarks of what the operation looked very similar to the Indian research and analysis wing. They're basically the Indian CIA. Had some hand in essentially performing what would be a coup, right?
Yeah.
So,
MI6.
right. They created this weird narrative of this man killing his whole family due to love or whatever, and then they put him essentially out of the way, and they have this uncle who is now the king of Nepal, the last in the line of succession, and he reigns, quote unquote, for 5 years until finally the public of Nepal comes out and says, you know what, you're not the king. You have no royal blood. We want someone who's actually the royal line.
We can do that?
Well, Nepal did.
Yeah, Nepal did, not us.
Damn it.
You got balls like Nepal?
Nice.
Answer him, man, Daddy.
I mean, I don't even have moves like Jagger, so I don't have balls like Nepal.
So they ended up basically instituting a republic. They said, you know what, you're not the king, and there is no more king. We're doing a monarch. We're doing away with the monarchy. We are going to have a republic now. And they switched. They are now a republic, essentially, in Nepal after the 2001 Nepalese massacre. 5 years of the uncle reigning, and then in 2006 there was an official ousting of this man. Some say due to actually the fact that he refused to observe this very specific like religious ritual where they would go to offer prayer to what would be like the goddess of the state, almost like the one who watches over everything,
The president.
and he was making kind of a protest to the point that the monarchy had lost some of its teeth in that they had given a lot of power to parliament and stuff like that. So he was saying, well, I'm not even the king. I'm going to go to this thing as like a commoner, and I'll just show up whenever I want and give an offering. And everybody was like, it's the curse again. So if you think about it, it's the guy who got killed, the king, was the 9th. The prince who, quote unquote, shot himself on the wrong side of his head with 2 bullets was the 10th, which would have fulfilled the curse of Garank. And then the 11th was this guy who technically was never king and was ousted. And that's the end of the Nepalese monarchy. They are now a republic. They have like political parties and they vote and like that. And the curse of that man came true. So eat the cheese. Eat the cheese.
Well,
You're listening to Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Welcome back to Fort Fritz. To keep all of us entertained here during this pandemic and to keep things sane and rational and functioning, we are playing our favorite stories. So, without further ado, check out Man Daddy's story about necropolist Anatoly Moskvin, a very strange and twisted case. If there's any young ones around, just, tuck them off to bed or tell them, shoo, go get out of here. If you're driving in the car, it's not that bad at all. Enjoy.
Have you ever heard of Anatoly Moskvin?
No. Of course not.
Never. How do you spell that last name?
Anatoly, Anatoly Moskvin, Moskvin.
Is it Ana? Anatoly?
Anatoly.
Anatoly.
Anatoly Moskvin. Anatoly, and now I'm making it. It's
Anatoly
Russian guy.
I don't think
Look
so.
how Russian this guy is.
Cannoli.
That's racist.
Anatoly Moskvin was born in September 1966 in Nizhny Novgorod. Sure, or does not deal with that?
Nizhny Novgorod.
Nizhny Novgorod.
Yeah.
Sure.
Nizhny Novgorod.
He was an academic and a linguist who spoke 13 languages.
Nice.
He was well known in academic circles.
I didn't even know there were that many.
Yeah, I think there's 16 or 17 total.
Yeah, it's about that.
He was well known in academic circles for his knowledge of Celtic history and folklore. He also had a deep interest in cemeteries, burial rites, death, and the occult. He has been described as a genius, but slightly eccentric. He led a solitary life, duh. Never married, duh. Lived with his parents, double duh.
Jesus.
They traveled most of the year. So he had his own little separate apartment that he lived in, and they were gone most of the year. And he was supposedly a virgin. He lectured at local universities, wrote several books, and contributed to different newspapers and publications.
Okay. So he at least led a somewhat productive life as a citizen.
Yeah, he was supposedly very intelligent. Yeah. And he described himself as a necropolist. He was a necropolist.
Meaning...
dead.
Okay.
Like, yes,
Yep. City of the Dead?
Necropolis.
Necropolist. Not a necropolis, but a necropolist. He was also an expert on all the local cemeteries. Like this one.
How so? Yeah, an expert.
It seems his interest in the dead began at a young age. When he was 12, he witnessed a funeral procession of an 11-year-old girl. Moskvin alleged that the participants forced him to kiss the dead girl's face.
Oh.
He wrote, quote, "An adult pushed my face down to the waxy forehead of the girl in the embroidered cap and there is nothing I could do but kiss her as ordered. This interest in the dead would slowly become an obsession.
Jeez.
In 2005, a fellow academic and publisher commissioned Moskvin to summarize and list the dead in more than 700 cemeteries. Moskvin said that he visited 752 cemeteries on foot between 2005 and 2007, sometimes walking up to 20 miles a day.
That's a lot of cemeteries, too, within 20 miles. 752 cemeteries?
Oh, well, you got to think about World War II, how many Russians died in World War II.
Yeah,
probably was all over.
Like 24 million?
Yeah, like a ridiculous amount, so I'm sure.
This town that he's living in now, is it close to that that Western Front?
Check a map. I just got the story. I didn't grab a globe.
I'll just assume it's right next to Germany.
So yeah, it's right there. He said that he would drink from puddles, spend nights in haystacks and abandoned farms. Sometimes he would sleep in the cemeteries themselves.
There's really Huckleberry Finn in it.
Like any true academic.
Right?
Yeah, he's just doing it right, just really getting in it.
Getting a chance to have an adventure, like mom and dad are off on vacation. Go walk around, sleep in haystacks.
I'm the graveyard tramp.
Stealing apple pies off of windowsills.
Hello, Mary. How are the children? Just like talking to gravestones.
Dead, I presume.
Oh.
Even once he said he slept in a coffin that was being prepared for a funeral. So he really got into his job. Now, the work itself that he did complete is unpublished, but it's been described as unique and priceless. So his description and study of all these cemeteries supposedly was really well done. Spot on.
Huh.
Now, when visiting a forest, you should take only pictures and leave only footprints.
I love that quote.
But Moskvin took much more than pictures.
Of course he did.
On November 2nd, 2011, investigators visited Moskvin's home, seeking help with a series of grave desecrations in and around the area. What they discovered was shocking, to say the least.
Desecrations?
Yes, desecrations, opening of graves and doing of the whatnot. They found mummified bodies of 29 girls aged 3 to 12.
Oh, no.
The bodies were dressed in bright clothes and scarves. One was even dressed up to look like a teddy bear. Their faces were wrapped in light beige fabric, some with lipstick and drawn-on eyes. And there was a video you can see from inside his apartment where you could see some of the bodies in various spots, including one sitting on a shelf. Just, you've heard of elf on a shelf? How about a corpse on a shelf?
Like a young child, like a doll?
Like a 3-year-old,
God.
baby girl just sitting on a shelf, but it's all wrapped up and it's all a corpse inside, doll outside, basically.
So so some graves were being tampered with, desecrated. How did they find this guy?
Because he was known for being an expert on the local cemeteries and everything. They just didn't realize how closely associated with the cemeteries he was.
So did they go for, ask him for help, and then they were like, oh, this is the dude?
Yes,
well,
exactly.
They went to talk to him, and also his parents had just recently come home from a vacation unannounced. They came home early, and that was the first time they had noticed there was something wrong. Because they look like dolls.
Right.
They don't look like, you don't automatically look at it and go, oh, that's a corpse. It looks like a weird doll. And so the parents were kind of like, we need to check this out. And so it just all happened to be a perfect storm that coincided.
Oh, wow.
Seems like you should have had the foresight to be like, all right, they tasked me with going out and checking out these graves, and now all of a sudden they're all messed up, and they're going to come back to me. Like, it didn't occur to him. This this brilliant academic guy didn't have the foresight.
He also seems like he's super weird, though. So maybe that just never occurred to him, or
you just don't have enough you didn't watch enough gangster TV shows.
Blame it on his lack of pop culture.
Right, exactly. I feel like if he would have
a little less grave robbing, a little more Sopranos, and this guy would be sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what
we've been saying that for years when it comes to grave robbers. Now, it seems that Moskvin researched mummification techniques. He dried the bodies using a combination of salt and baking soda, and then he would cache the bodies somewhere secure in a dry place around the cemetery. So he'd do this on spot. Once they were cured, he would take them back to his home. Like that, they were cured.
They're cured like a sausage
jerky.
or something.
Yeah, cringe.
How long would he let them sit for?
It depends on how long the body had been dead. If it was a fresher body, it would take longer. And he'd like the fresher ones, like we all do.
Requires a delicate touch to cure it just right.
Right.
Here,
like
here
prosciutto.
in Muscovine Farms, we lovingly hand package all of our doll baby corpse things. Making doll
Totally.
baby dead things since
Doll
2011.
baby dead.
Making baby dead things. Now, once they're cured, he would take them back home. He would wrap the limbs with cloth to provide fullness, or he would dress them, or he would stuff them with rags and padding to make them more full because they'd be, sullen corpses. Then he would dress them and added wigs so they appeared to be large dolls.
Oh, good God. dude.
Really
He
gruesome.
claimed that he made dolls over a period of 10 years. He would do extensive research on the girls' lives. He would sing to them,
Oh.
watch cartoons with them, and even held birthday parties for them.
Did he confess all of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, this is not just, no, he did this.
Oh man.
He felt that they could one day be brought back to life through either science or black magic. He felt that the bodies he created would one day house them when they returned to life because they're so desiccated now, they needed the extra wrapping to, almost like mummies.
I just want to be the one to ask because I know we're all thinking it. I'm just going to throw it out there. Was he a necrophiliac?
No.
Okay.
He never
He was just super
did
weird.
anything sexual.
Come on, nobody else had that
No,
question?
I was gonna ask that.
No, he never did anything sexual with the dolls. He was very specific about that.
It's all about controlling this person's life now.
Well, no,
After
it's,
death.
it's not that. He actually cared. He felt the dead children were calling out to him. He was rescuing them. He explained that ancient druids slept on graves in order to communicate with the dead. And so he began to search for children who had recently died, and when a particular obituary spoke to him, he would then sleep on their grave to see if the child wanted to be brought back to life. He says that he never ever dug up a child that didn't want to be. And supposedly he was doing this before he did the dolls. He'd just been digging up kids for about 20 years. When he got too old to sleep on the graves is when he began to bring them home. And he hoped that the spirits would be more willing to speak in a safe, welcoming home, and that they might be easier for him to hear when they were no longer underground and laying next to him so he could actually hear them. So they came, they found him, they of course arrested him, and
Thank
after, they're just like, okay, we're gonna do something about this. And like I said, the video's online and it's creepy.
This entire thing is just skin crawling.
Right?
You're welcome.
Yeah.
It's what I do. Now, after a psychiatric evaluation, it was determined that he suffered from a form of paranoid schizophrenia, and he was deemed unfit to stand trial. And he is currently in the same psychiatric clinic without any release in the foreseeable future. So no matter how intelligent, no matter how educated anyone can appear to be, anyone can be seduced by the call of darkness.
Oh, my God.
You're listening to Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Welcome back to Fort Fritz. This next story involves something that hit very, very close to home here in Florida. The Killer Clown and Marlene Warren. This one narrated by Nick Spry.
A bunch of freaky, weird stranger clowns showing up at your door and just handing you things. That's
I
totally
don't know. They're
dangerous.
singing
No.
telegrams. What's the difference?
Have you ever heard about the murder of Marlene Warren?
No, Marlene Warren.
Who's that?
Did this take place somewhere around here?
Yeah, actually, this happened in Florida.
You don't say.
Yeah, let me school you. On Saturday, May 26th, in the year 1990, it was Memorial Day weekend in Wellington, Florida, which is considered a quote-unquote village of West Palm Beach County. It was 10:45 in the morning that day. So Michael and Marlene Warren, they lived in this neighborhood of Aero Club. They were the successful owners of several businesses and properties, including a car dealership and a car rental agency. Their net worth at the time in 1990 was well over $1 million. So Marlene, who was then 40 years old at the time, she answered a call at the front door, opening it to find a delivery of flowers and balloons. The delivery person was dressed in full clown regalia.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they had the whole Bozo the Clown costume, including the white face paint, a red nose, gloves, and they topped off the whole thing with a curly, bright orange wig. That morning, because of the holiday weekend, there was a group of family and friends over at the Warrens' house. Her son from another marriage, Joey Ahearns, he was 21 years old at the time. He recalls hearing his mother say, "Oh, how pretty," quote. She was accepting the flowers and balloons, and which one of them read, there was 2 balloons, "You're the greatest." Then Joey Ahearns, he heard the shot before he realized what had happened. The clown had silently raised its arm after handing over the packages and pulled out a .38 caliber revolver and fired a single shot directly into the mouth of Marlene Warren.
Oh my God.
Whoa.
The guests rushed to the foyer and to find Marlene collapsed in a pool of blood. Her son, Joey, he ran outside of the door and saw the clown heading towards a white Chrysler LeBaron. It stopped and turned to face him, and he noticed that the clown had brown eyes, and then it turned back around, rushed off to the car, got in, and sped away. Now, suspicion might immediately fall on Michael Warren, as he would stand to gain the most from Marlene's death.
And he was the husband?
He was the husband at the time. He was not there that morning. Their valuable business and properties were both in Marlene's name, but he would be the sole benefactor if she were to pass. So the couple had been also having marital problems for some time, and Michael Warren, he had a valid alibi for that morning. While the clown was on their doorstep, he was actually en route to Calder Racetrack with some friends. He was in traffic on I-95.
So he's got multiple people.
That's a very
vouching for
common
him.
excuse for South Florida. I was in traffic on 95.
Yeah,
Couldn't
right?
have killed her.
Yeah.
Couldn't have killed her. I was in traffic.
But the police, they still suspected his involvement somehow with the killing. So the police's other main suspect in the case was Sheila Keene. Keene and her husband, Richard, they ran a car repo business at the time, and they had been on the Warrens' payroll for quite some time. But when she was questioned by the police, Sheila said that she was in Boynton Beach, Riviera Beach, and Lake Worth. She was searching for cars on the repossessed list there. Sheila Keene was also the alleged other woman in regards to the Warrens' marriage. Employees and friends, business associates of the Warrens noted that Sheila and Michael had become extremely close over the past 5 months, and that they would often go to long lunches together. But about 2 weeks before the murder, they had been fighting or quarreling, and they were not as close as they had been. They hadn't been seen as much together.
There was some, there's some drama there.
There was some drama going on.
This seems like a very normal Palm Beach relationship.
Michael Warren, 5 months after Marlene's death, the police arrested him. The scrutiny that his business had been put under during the murder investigation, it unearthed enough evidence to charge him with 66 felony counts.
How?
Of fraud.
All
Yes,
right.
of fraud, including racketeering, grand theft, petty theft, and odometer fraud through the scheme that he was. That was a
That's
real
a very
subsection.
specific
fraud.
He was brought up on all of these charges, and then in August of 1992, a jury found him guilty of 43 counts of fraud and racketeering, and he was up against a possible maximum sentence of 237 years in prison. But a judge found that prosecutors were probably being biased in the fact that they couldn't put together a proper trial for this murder charge,
He also
and so
had
they were
less
being
frauds than the first time.
Well,
Yeah, but why is he being charged for the murder?
He wasn't. No one was ever charged, but they felt like that.
So no
prosecutors,
one was ever charged
no
for this
one was
murder?
ever charged for this murder.
You
It's
have
still
got to be
unsolved
kidding
to this
me.
day. Sheila Keene eventually divorced her estranged husband Richard in 2000, and then 2 years later, she and Michael Warren were married in Nevada.
Okie dokie. That's crazy.
But I'm just saying, never know what a clown is going to bring to your front door.
You're listening to Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Fort Fritz on Real Radio 104.1.
Welcome back to Fort Fritz here on Real Radio 104.1. Hello, I am Fritz, and we are wrapping up tonight with something a lot of people might not even be aware of. Did you know that they were medieval zombies of Ireland? This one's narrated by Angela. Enjoy.
Do you guys know about the zombies of Ireland?
What?
Arr.
They come from everywhere these days, the zombies, right?
I know.
They're caravans.
There's so many different flavors of zombie now.
They're coming across.
I have not heard of these zombies.
Between 2005 and 2009, archaeologists working in Ireland dug up 2 8th century human skeletons that told a spooky story. The skeletons were exhumed at Kilchian, near Lochee, with stones stuck in their mouths. Not from a natural progression of the earth shifting, but intentional. Upon examining the remains, it seemed that this odd burial practice had something to do with the fear of zombies.
It's interesting to note that sometimes when bodies have been buried for millennia, in this case, you said 8th century?
8th century.
So that's the 700s.
The 700s.
Over time, there will be earthquakes in certain mountainous regions.
Correct.
So the idea that this was not something that just happened to fall into the mouths of these corpses, this was something almost like a f*** you.
Exactly.
Take that, corpse.
Very intentional. Like, not just rocks falling into the skeleton. Something was absolutely shoved
Jammed
into.
in. So that they're
There's
like,
probably like scratches along the side that you could say there was forced instead of,
Correct.
you know.
Eesh.
The study originally began as a survey of medieval churches in the County Roscommon in like the central northwestern Ireland region, and then became the largest research excavation in Ireland.
Jeez.
The team of archaeologists was led by Chris Reed, head of applied archaeology at the Institute of Technology in Sligo, Ireland, and Thomas Finnan of the University of St. Louis. In that span of 4 years, of 2005 to 2009, a total of 137 skeletons were recovered by this team. The researchers believe that about 3,000 skeletons are still buried, from 700 to 1,400 that are still underground right now.
Wow.
The site have revealed traces from the Neolithic, Bronze Age, early and later medieval eras.
Old as hell.
Old as hell.
Children of the Earth kind of
Yeah.
era. Like
Druids.
Old as
so
hashtag old AF.
Speak to the ants.
The ants have split off into one faction that just want to build a wall to keep the other ants out.
Of you?
I'm not sure yet. There's a lot of questions around the wall, funding, who's gonna pay for this and all that.
Sounds very divided.
Things have been rough lately.
These deviant burials, so we're talking about the two skeletons with stones in their mouths, were two men who were buried there at different times in the 700s. So they found like 137 skeletons, but two of them had these like stones like jammed in their jaws.
Only two out of all those.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a pretty good zombie percentage, I guess.
One man was between 40 and 60, they're not really sure, and the other a young adult around 20 or 30. They were both laid to rest side by side with baseball-sized rocks shoved into their mouths.
wow.
You gotta really push to get that damn thing in there. You ever try to bite a baseball?
Actually, no, but
You shouldn't.
Were these jaws? Thank you for that PSA.
The more you know.
Never bite baseballs.
Were the lower jaws disconnected
Or are they
from the
snakes?
skull?
They can unhinge the
yes,
jaw.
they were very mutilated. So this was not a very... I mean, obviously this was done after their death,
You hope.
but someone had some severe anger shoving these rocks in their mouths.
Yeah, it's like a curb stomping almost.
Jesus.
One of them was lying with his head looking straight up. A large black stone had been deliberately thrust into his mouth. The other had his head turned to the side and had an even larger stone wedged quite violently into his mouth so that his jaws were almost dislocated.
Oh my
Whoa.
god.
So initially Reed, so this is Chris Need, one of the archaeologists, initially him and his colleagues thought that they had found a Black Death-related burial ground. Remains of individuals buried at the end of the Middle Ages with stones stuck in their mouths have hinted at vampire slaying rituals. It was believed that these quote-unquote vampires, individuals, spread the plague by chewing on their shrouds after dying. In a time before germ theory, the stone in the mouth was then used as a disease-blocking trick.
Ah, so they couldn't chew.
Correct.
Oh.
The old stake through the heart kind of
Right.
thing. Like,
Oh, so yeah, they're like very
However-
primitive.
However, since the vampire phenomenon didn't emerge in European folklore till the 1500s, so mind you, these were bodies that were buried in the 700s.
yeah.
So folklore of the vampire didn't emerge till the 1500s. The archaeologists ruled out this theory for the 8th century skeletons. In this case, the stones in the mouth might have acted as a barrier to stop the revenants from coming back from their graves.
Okay, so this is a little close to home for you, I'm
Of course
guessing.
you would tell us about
Just a little
revenants,
close to
Angela.
home for you, isn't it, huh?
Maybe.
I'm afraid of you.
I don't know what you're talking
You
about.
should be.
Revenants, whatever
Yeah.
they are,
Yeah, who knows?
otherwise known as the Walking Dead, were usually seen as outsiders in society. As with two men with stones in their mouths, as they could have been seen as dangerous people, enemies, murderers, or rapists, or they could have been innocent people who died from a strange illness or murder. Anything outside of the norm could have excited some fear in the community, and they would come back to harass loved ones or take revenge against anyone who had wronged them.
We don't exactly know what's going on, right? So, if we were to, let's just try stuffing rocks in this guy's face.
Yeah, it's so long ago. Let's just try anything. Okay, let's start with the rocks and move on.
I feel like
Start with the rocks.
The punishment for a crime thing sounds most right, to me at least. Like, ancient people are like, whatever, like, you in the afterlife and just rock in the mouth, and then they bury him.
Well, like,
I don't know why you wouldn't bury him anyway. Why go through the trouble of burying him if you're like, let the animals have him, or throw him in the sea?
Well, even now, you see pictures and videos of thieves who get bullet holes through their left or right hand as a you. Just
a final big you with a rock baseball.
You don't need a lot of courage to humiliate or mutilate a corpse. Because
you just need the time.
Dead, correct?
It's a right-sized rock.
So it was just I have total control over you.
Right.
And
take this. But only 2 specifically out of 130-something buried there. It's strange.
So it's interesting that you guys think of the rocks as like a punishment, because that is a good question. Like, why are there stones in their mouth? Like, why that of all places? It was viewed as the main portal for the soul to leave the body upon death.
It's like a cork, basically. They corked them in.
So sometimes the soul would come out
cork.
the back of the body and reanimate it, or else an evil spirit could enter the body through the mouth and bring it back to life. So that was it was double. So it was your soul wouldn't leave your body, but also so that an evil entity couldn't
take it over. Dual purpose.
So, honestly, this sounds kind of like, when the ants were bringing me stuff to put in my mouth, they were, like, always saying these weird things, like, take that, and chanting all this weird stuff.
Oh,
it sounds like it could have been like this.
Like feeding you. Like, take that. Take that. Take that.
Nourishing me and helping me.
I think they're saying, take that! Take that!
Was it rocks? Were they putting rocks inside of you?
What kind of nutritional value is that?
It was small. Like, often it hurt my stomach, whatever they were putting in there, but I didn't have much of a choice.
Little tiny ant rocks.
We've subjected you to a terrible, terrible existence.
I'm very sorry
I
about
apologize.
that.
This I feel guilty.
I'm still
I
okay with
actually
it.
feel bad.
He's like,
I'm feeling all right.
Yeah, see? Not so bad.
This is nothing for him.
He's been out here so many months. He hasn't been on Facebook forever. He's doing way better than anybody. He's doing way better than anybody. He's so detached. He's like cut the cable. He's off social media, man. He's living real. He's being real with his
do you
ants.
even know who the president is?
It's definitely still George Bush, right?
Oh, man. We got to talk later.
Yeah, we've got a story for you,
So
buddy.
it's the secret to life, just to like get off Facebook and eat rocks.
To have ants feed you rocks.
Ants feed you
got,
rocks. That's
without
the
the
main
ants, the whole formula does not work.
To clog
Okay.
your soul into your body.
According to Christina Kilgrove, a biological anthropologist at the University of North Carolina, the burials dating is particularly interesting as it appears to predate historical records on revenants.
Interesting.
She was also intrigued by the fact that the two males were not buried at the same time. However, they were buried side by side.
So
There was a specific place to put these type of people.
Exactly. So
The rock mouths.
it's a non-traditional manner, which suggests that these burials were not accidental or careless. There was an intention on having a specific plot for these potential walking dead. And Ireland isn't the only place where these types of burials have been discovered. Similar kinds of mutilations to dead bodies have been found in a deserted village called Warren Percy in North Yorkshire, England. Analysis of the bones dating from the 11th to the 14th centuries show that they appear to have been burnt and mutilated. Theories suggesting that the remains were cannibalized by starving villagers were debunked.
Oh, God, thank God.
At least that.
At least that. And again, it was discovered that these practices were aimed at stopping corpses from rising up their graves and menacing the living.
So it's happened before. They're like, okay, we need to stop this from happening.
This is happening in like multiple places.
Let's just try to stop all that. Anybody got any rocks?
I mean, if you think about it, this is medieval times, right?
Right.
And
You
you
mean the
have
place
like,
where the people fight and you get the cheap food? Medieval times?
yeah, and there's a hawk and a falcon that flies around,
this is
and you
fun.
get like Pepsi. It's great. So
A grog of Pepsi.
I've been there multiple times. So Ireland and England are two separate islands.
Painfully,
obviously.
obviously.
I mean, not super far.
No,
but they're separate.
they hate one another.
It-
God, they hate one
They
another.
really do.
They really do.
and there's like two separate regions in which these practices are happening. So that is super creepy.
Across the board.
Yeah.
Even your enemies can have revenants coming out of the grave, and you should feel bad for them. So give your enemies rocks to stuff in the face of your revenants.
So
That's the ultimate up. Like,
Yeah,
I
it
don't
is.
want your soul to go to Nirvana.
Yeah, like you're
or
dead,
Valhalla.
and I'm still controlling your life right now.
Just lay there.
Many bones had knife marks suggesting that the corpses had been decapitated and dismembered. While there was also evidence of burning body parts and deliberate breaking of bones after death. So people were actually just mutilating dead bodies so that they wouldn't come back. Folklore in the Middle Ages suggested people could sometimes rise from the dead, roam their local area, spread disease, and violently assault those who encountered them. The undead were commonly thought to be the result of a lingering malevolent life force in individuals who had committed evil deeds or caused animosity when they were alive.
Like an unavenged spirit.
Correct.
Oh,
So
God.
either they were just a nasty person who had died, and obviously they were already just a terrible person, or something terrible had happened to them, and they just needed to come back and act on their revenge.
That is super
awesome.
spooky.
What's great to think about is that because there's so much of our modern horror mythology and everything is based on ancient myths and everything. Maybe this stuff all did happen, but all the cures just eventually worked.
Yeah.
You know, it just,
Yep.
oh yeah, you know, putting the stones in the mouth. Oh, totally got rid of them. Oh yeah, no, there are totally revenants everywhere. Stones in the mouth. You haven't tried that? It works.
We've absolutely cured things in our lifetime.
Right. And so that might have
sure,
happened. And then
maybe
the
it
stakes in the
worked.
heart, it's like, oh my God, just stake in the heart. No more vampires. This works.
The copy editor back in like the 7th century was like, all right, print it. That's great.
And of course, there had to be someone back then going, you know what? I'm not going to put stones in the mouth of my parents because I heard that that's not good. Everybody's like, dude, put the stones in the mouth of your parents. Would you do that? No, I read a blog that said that's just not a good idea. And then it's like, that's how you get more revenants.
Anti-stoners?
Yeah, I hate these anti-stoners, man. In real life, too.
Awesome. You read my blog?
Wait, that was you?
Yeah, dude. Like stonescauseautism.com.
Yeah. I'm amazed that was actually available.
Yeah, no, I had to pay a lot for that, but it was definitely worth it.
You had to buy it off of Goop.
He seems to have his footing now. Look at him. He's getting
limbered up.
he's
The mention in the
definitely
blog
feeling
perks him
better.
up. Yeah, for sure. Seems like he got a sense of purpose.
So, I mean, now
Bungalower on the bus up next. Don't forget, you can win $1,000. Keep listening and text in that keyword when you hear it to 200-200 and then answer your phone. Until next time, stay spooky.
Until next time, pleasant dreams.